contradicting to the typical saying that you want to design for customer, innovate for customer. Again, the reason you don't want to design, innovate directly for customer is because their preferences change. What you need to do is you need to understand the trend. Therefore, based on as is, you can take advantage of the trend to estimate what will be the to be. That is very important. From the as is to be, that mapping is a very important and creative activity in innovation, and that has been the things that we've been lectured on up to this point. So we want to identify new concept, and this is called conceptual innovation. Then we want to detail the solution. So there are 4 stages you have to go through as innovator. The first stage is you go out to understand what people are currently saying, what they're suffering, what they enjoy. Then you come back. You look at a big trend. I'm going to share with you what's a big trend. Then, based on your understanding of the big trend, you want to creatively think about what will be the emerging requirement. And you want to innovate for the future. You do not want to innovate for the present or the past. You don't want to do that. So this is the stage we do innovation. For those of you who are familiar with President Shou's axiomatic design, this is actually axiomatic thinking, that you have 4 different stages. Functional innovation, which you map from the customer needs to the functional requirement. Then you have conceptual innovation, then you have a technical innovation. In this particular course, we only teach functional innovation and conceptual innovation. We do not teach technical innovation. The reason is the following, that when you get into the technical innovation, it will require a lot of disciplinary knowledge. Remember, these students all come from very broad discipline. At the very beginning, they don't really need a lot of disciplinary knowledge. They just need a good common sense, a good rational thinking. And we will leave this later on, okay? So we are talking about the functional innovation. And the functional innovation is the process of mapping. Functional innovation is the process of mapping customer need to the emerging wants. It is very important you innovate for what people want rather than what they need. The reason is if you innovate for what they need, although it's easier, very quickly you end up into commodity. Commodity means that nothing but price matters. It becomes a price competition. You really do not have added value. But how do you get from the need to wants? How do you get from the current needs to the future wants? That's the first question an innovator must answer. Now, in our lecture, we have talked about there are 3 things that can help you to understand the future wants. The first thing is something called customer satisfaction model, which you need to understand that a good innovator will always work on the excitement feature, but the excitement feature will always become performance feature and then eventually become the basic feature. So we already finished this part of the lecture in the previous weeks. And we also talk about S-curve. It is very important when you innovate for particular technology, you understand the current state of the affair of technology, whether the technology is still at the initial stage, like the green technology, or the technology has already get into very severe competition, like a lot of current, like automotive industry, the diesel technology, or the technology has already entered the end phase where it becomes a commodity, like a lot of outsourcing, a lot of price competition. And this we already finished the lecture in the previous, okay? Last time we talked about, just begin to talk about, which I will continue this week, is called the social, economical, and technical factor. This is called the set factor, okay? The set factor basically is a big trend. A good innovator must understand a big trend. You must read newspaper, you must read magazine, you must have a good idea of what is happening around you in 3 things. Number 1, the social trend. What are the social trends that's going to impact on person's current needs so that her or his future wants can be understood? Second one is the economical trend. Because at the end of the innovation, you end up with some commodity or services which people will pay money to acquire. It depends on how much economic resources they have. They will prefer different things. Say, for example, right now we are under the worldwide recession. Therefore, a lot of innovation now focusing on something called frugal engineering. that how do you make things cheap and yet still work, which is very different kind of innovation requirement just a couple years ago. People will add a lot of function, and the product become more fancier, become more expensive, and you always have a customer willing to pay more money to do it. Now it's different. People will be very cautious spending their money. You have to really get good value out. The third thing is called technology factor. Those are the big trends. Say, for example, there's a technology factor now about solar energy. There's a technology factor now about new clean technology. All these things will impact on what you can innovate. Okay? Now, a good innovator must understand how these things interact. The next table indicating how you apply those big factors into the subject of your innovation. So here's the table. I want to open a discussion for the students. Let me explain this table to you, okay? We talk about, we have to understand the social factor. We have to understand the economic factors. We have to understand technology factor, right? And also, we talk about that the social factor that is of importance maybe is different in America versus in China versus in Taiwan, right? The economic situation is also different in US, in China, or in Taiwan. The technology factor, although technology is more universal, but still have a local feature because the government regulation, because the cost of production, because the user acceptance, correct? So what we want to do is we want to ask a student from USC to give us idea of what are the social factors, economic factor, technology factors. We want to do the same thing for Peking University student from China and NTU student from Taiwan. Now, what they are asked to do is to innovate something to improve their campus life, right? That's their goal. Therefore, specifically, I want to ask a student to contribute their idea about what are the social factors happening in China, say, for example, which will have impact on a possible impact on campus life. Then once you have go through this discussion with your teammates, which come from all over the world, you will have a better idea on what will be the future trend based on the current needs. Okay? So maybe at this point, let me open the discussion. Let me first ask the USC students to give me some idea about what are the big social factor, economic factor, and technical factor which will impact on campus life. Anyone from USC? Anyone from USC, please? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Any one of them, social, economic, or technology? I see economic. Okay, I see economic as students are a lot more strapped for cash, and we're seeing things become more difficult in terms of paying for food, housing, and whatnot. That's mine.
Okay. So affordability will be an issue that will impact on future college life, correct?
And whatnot.
Any other input? Yes? Go ahead.
Okay. I think one that pretty much hits all three even is cell phone use. For social factors, everyone's a lot more connected. Professors are a lot more concerned about it. Using cell phones in class, sort of how it impacts it. Even professors have cell phones and they're receiving calls in class. Maybe they don't know how to use it as well. That sort of thing. Economically, they're becoming a lot cheaper for everyone, so pretty much everyone has them. Even more in the third world with cell phones. Everywhere on the street, people are living on $2 a day, but they can afford to have a cell phone. Cell phone units are being used as currency, that sort of thing, across the world. And then technologically, we saw in the first case study how these different business models are popping up in China to produce these standardized products, and they're really improving on the cell phone technology really quickly. So I think that's one thing that's going to really need to be addressed because it encompasses all those situations on all three campuses, and I think we really utilize that trend to our advantage. especially professors, because if you could get students to be using their cell phones to be engaged in your class rather than disengaged from your class, you could just open up so many possibilities.
Okay, so what you said is, let me generalize a little bit. What she said is the rapid development of information and communication technology now become a central part of students' life. This is very interesting because if you look at all the campus design today, they were all inherited from before we have cell phone, before we have wireless computer. So all the infrastructure, all the campus are built upon before the cellular technology. Suppose I give you a blank sheet of paper. I said, today, I want you to design a campus college, a college life, which is centered around the fact that people can instantaneously contact each other and they have all the communication tools. And you'll be very surprised to see the outcome of a campus infrastructure could be very different. Okay? Other questions? Others? Next one from USC.
I guess.
Go ahead. Do something.
I guess just saying this.
I can next one. Next to Amy.
Oh yeah. Okay. Just stating a similar point to what Amy has said already.
See, Yuri, you can tell.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's just like the way, just to talk upon technology. The students are becoming much more adaptable to technology. We're ready. We're first mover adopters when it comes to new technology, when it comes like with the new product like the iPad, the Kindle. The way information is being delivered to us, it's much more different than it was in the past. And just speaking to you how like campus design infrastructure, nowadays, the old form of information being delivered to us was through textbooks. But now when you see in the future, now we're going to have students getting information through laptops, through the Kindle, through other modes of mobile devices of how we receive information. And I guess a major implication would be textbooks might become an inefficient use of getting our content and our desire to understand the context of why I'm in an engineering school, why am I in the business school, to understand what does the content, how does it apply to real world. I feel like that kind of technology development and wide acceptance on USC's campus, I feel like that's one major factor that we all have to consider.
Very good. Very good. Let me summarize this. What he said is the access of information today is very different from just 10, 20, 30 years ago. And yet our campus are built before the information age. Suppose I give you a blank sheet of paper you draw from the beginning to design a new campus which are information-centric. That is, depends on what kind of information students want to access. You probably will come with a very different kind of campus. And he talked about, for example, eventually the iPad will replace textbook. I don't know whether it will happen or not. But if that's happened, what are you going to do? Whether you have any opportunity for innovation. Do you have a different way to distribute the content? Will that be a good business model rather than a textbook controlled by the publisher? And how do you recycle the information? How do you keep the information being intellectual property right? Many, many different new issues will come out. Okay? So let me move to Peking. Let me have the PKU student to say a few words about social